Hello, brothers and sisters. I just wanted to get on here and talk a little about the fascination that man has with death. And man fears death so much, but at the same time, they embrace death of other things so much. And it's so interesting that we live our lives, except those that decide to take their life. But for the most part, most people live their lives to fear death and I want to say avoid death, but at the same time, they do things that are going to create a sooner death. So, this is something that is quite interesting. So many of us fear death, but we do things in our lives to bring us closer to death. And the idea and fascination that surrounds around death of when we die and how we die and trying to avoid dying, but at the same time supporting death in our lives and other lives. It's so interesting. And when we look at the scriptures, so much of the scriptures revolve around life and death. It's such an interesting topic. In the Bible, it talks about everlasting life, where there will be no death of the flesh, an everlasting life for eternity. Something as believers we all desire. Some people say, well, if I die in the flesh, I'll just get there sooner to that place. But we have to take a closer look at that. What intention did our Creator give us when He created us as it comes to the word death or the idea of death? Did He want us to shorten our lives and achieve that physical death sooner so we can obtain that eternal death? Or did He ultimately want us to be here for a long time, even perhaps eternity? Death is a very important and interesting topic when it comes to scripture that a lot of people do not discuss or look at or focus on. But in the garden, our Creator gave us a tree of life. And that tree of life wasn't about the spiritual life of eternity with our wonderful Messiah. That tree of life, I believe, was about our physical life, that there would not be a physical death. And something changed from that point where our Creator now allowed or took away that everlasting physical life. And when we look at the event of Scripture, we see what happened. If you believe the word of Scripture, you see that Satan, who was cast out of heaven, was now in the garden with Adam and Eve. And our Creator now has three of them in the garden. You had Adam, Eve, and Satan. And Adam was the one created to have everlasting physical life. Perhaps. He was told not to eat from the tree of knowledge, but there was also the tree of life there. So we have Adam, who was created to have everlasting life in a physical stand, and Eve that came from Adam. But then we have Satan, who wanted to destroy our Creator's plans. And because of him, the sin led to physical death. Now, how did that happen? How did Satan bring physical death upon the people? Prior to the events recorded in the book of Genesis with Satan and Eve and Adam, man was to have physical everlasting life. Or we can, thousands of years, maybe 900 years of physical life, perhaps forever. There was a tree of life for a reason. Okay, the tree of knowledge he didn't want man to partake of. The tree of knowledge, was something that was off limits. But the tree of life was there for a reason. The goal and the idea that our Creator had, everlasting physical life, in his plan for man. How did Satan bring death upon people? Our Creator talked and showed the instructions for Adam and Eve. And in those instructions, they were put in a beautiful paradise to supply all their needs. Now listen, they were put in a beautiful paradise to supply all their needs. All their needs. They weren't worried about clothing. They didn't need any clothing. That meant they lived in a nice tropical place. They weren't worried about food. They had all the food that they would need. They had all the tree-bearing fruits. They weren't worried about medicine or health care. They had all the herbs as their medicine. These are the instructions of our Creator. As a matter of fact, they weren't worried about anything because they didn't have the knowledge of evil and wickedness and all the negative emotions. They weren't only living in a paradise. They had all their needs that were met in a paradise. But then when Satan came down and spoke to Eve and Adam, listened to Eve, and they disobeyed our Creator, they disrupted his plan. They disrupted his plan. And what was now brought into it was the taking away of this everlasting physical life. The taking away of this everlasting physical life. And how did that happen? How did that happen? When they ate from the tree of knowledge, they realized that they were naked. They realized they were naked. And they were ashamed. So it's one thing to realize you're naked. It's another thing to be ashamed that you're naked. So they wanted to cover up. Our Creator never wanted them to realize certain things. Just as animals are walking around without clothing, the animals aren't ashamed to walk around without clothing. They don't know what it means to be naked or not. Yes, if you defur an animal, they're not going to want to go outside. This is their protective coat and what they want. But they were living a happy life. Now they realize they don't have something. As soon as they realized they ate from the tree of knowledge that they weren't supposed to eat from, they gained knowledge, right? And what's the first thing they realized? They realized we need more than our Creator is providing for us. That was the first thought they had. The first thought they had. We need more than our Creator provided for us. Chris said, don't go there. Don't eat from that tree. I could almost say you can call it the tree of stupidity, not the tree of knowledge. Satan lied when he said, that our Creator said, don't eat from the tree of knowledge because then you'll have all the knowledge of Yah. No, then you'll have the stupidity of man. Man didn't have this stupidity before they ate from the tree. But now they said, we need more. We need more. We need to dress ourselves. To dress ourselves. Our Creator provided for them because of a result of their sin. Listen to that, folks. Because of a result of sin, our Creator provided for them something to cover up with. Something to cover themselves with. If they never disobeyed our Creator to begin with, they wouldn't have needed something else. But our Creator gave them something as a result of their sin. And what did He give them? He gave them the skins of an animal. the skins of an animal to cover themselves with, a tunic that covered their whole bodies. Some people would suggest, well, where did this tunic come from? Where did this clothing come from? It says animal skins. You can only get animal skins from an animal. So many people would suggest that an animal had to die for those sins, those skins to have been available. My question isn't if the animal died for those skins to be available. My question was, why did that animal have to die for those skins to be available? Because man sinned. So sin is a result of something that goes against our Creator's plan. So now they're having the animal skins. Then they go all throughout this time, and things were not good. Man continued in their stupidity, the tree of stupidity, continued to do things that went against our Creator and His ways. And because of the result of the disobedience, our Creator yet again did something to shorten the physical life of man. He allowed them in Genesis 9, after the flood, to now consume the animal carcass. First, He gave them their skin. You would think that they would get the point. They're walking around with the skin of an animal. That doesn't sound like a nice, comfortable piece of clothing. I'm sure it wasn't, people hear that and they think, oh, they gave him a nice leather jacket or a nice fur coat. I don't think the animal skins that He covered them up with as a result of their sin was some beautiful fur coat or some nice leather jacket. I think it was literally raw animal skins that didn't look, feel, or smell any good, hoping they'd figure it out. They messed up big time. But they didn't get it. And they continued, or man continued to go against what our Creator wanted and how our Creator wanted. And we can go into all the accounts from that point, all the disobedience that they did. But then you get to so bad, they got kicked out of the garden. Then it was getting worse and worse and worse. Now the flood. So not as a result of a reward for that great behavior, as a result of their sin and disobedience, our Creator takes it even further. Go and eat animals. I'm not just taking the skin off the animal. You go and you eat an animal. And man, with their fascination of death, not only are now wearing death, now they're eating death. They're not only now surrounding themselves with death, now they're consuming death. Guess what happens? The lifespan continues to decline. I find it amazing that some people actually support or feel proud of this scripture that says our Creator said we can eat animals. That's not a good thing. Ask yourself why. Why did He say that? When you bring up that scripture to support eating animals, ask yourself, why did He say now you can eat animals? It wasn't a good thing. First, He allowed you to wear death. Now He's allowing you to consume death. And I believe He allowed this to teach us a lesson or show us a valuable understanding between life and death, so we can get as close to death as possible, to feel it, to taste it, experience it, to hopefully get back to the point of not wanting anything to do with enhancing it or bringing ourselves closer to it. But remember, the enemy, Satan's still lurking around, convincing people that this is a good thing and this was done for a good thing. That, oh, he wants you to now consume death. This is a good thing. But as the diseases set in and the lifespan started to decline, people start making a worship out of wearing and eating death. And you would think people would learn with the plagues that our Creator put on the people that there must be a cause of what's going on. Our Creator invites people to come to Him and talk to Him. And people decide to. They don't want to do that. They just want to continue in their consumption of death and their wearing of death. So now what happens? Our Creator gives them another sign to show them this isn't a good thing. He brings in, or He gives them, supposedly, a system of death. The shedding of and the murder of animals on a daily basis to show them what death looks like, what death smells like. Not what death will bring them. People thought that death and the sacrifices of the animals by man would give them salvation. That never happened. It's very interesting. The Jewish people at the time thought the sacrificial system was a good thing. It never gave them anything good. Never. It didn't take away disease. It didn't shorten life. It didn't give them everlasting life. It gave them nothing but showed them what death was. So now man was wearing death, consuming death, and committing murder and death on a regular daily basis. Our Creator trying to wake us up and give us every sign. Look, this is an example of you. And if you want so much of an obsession with disobeying me, so much of an obsession with death, this is what you will become. People will be consuming you. Animals will be consuming your body. I find it quite interesting that man is supposed to have dominion over the animals, but what it led to was a Creator saying, because of your disobedience, you will die in your physical life, and what will happen? You will be put out in the field, and animals will consume your flesh. So interesting. Oh, you want to consume the flesh of animals? Well, you will die, and animals will consume your flesh because of your disobedience. That was the curse of many of the people back then. Your bodies will be thrown out, your carcasses will be laying in the street, and animals would be consuming your flesh. Isn't that interesting? How man decided they want to have an obsession with consuming the death of animals, but our Creator said, you know what? Your carcasses will be laid out for animals to consume you. Very interesting. So now man is wearing death, consuming death, and fascinating with death. Our Creator's giving them all these signs. This is what death is. This is what this is what death is. And gave us warnings all throughout the scriptures. I don't want your sacrifices. They're never going to lead to the everlasting life. And they never did. The sacrifices of the animals never led to everlasting life. The sacrifices and the murder and the killing of the animals never led to disease being done away with. It never led to the restoration of going back to that time of a long age and peace and shalom. It only led 100% to violence, war, sickness, plagues, and death. And finally, Yeshua comes. Yeshua comes to do what? Yeshua comes to replace the death culture, to stop it, to put it away, to die, so those sacrifices would no longer continue. So we would get back to a place where we would have everlasting life. So we would stop wearing, consuming, and committing death on a regular basis. Man would stop killing our Creator's creation. Man would stop destroying the own creation that they became. Yeshua himself wanted this to stop and died for it to stop. And it should have stopped, giving us another opportunity to get back to the paradise. But man continues to have this obsession with death and continues to use scriptures to support their obsession with wearing, consuming, and experience death on a daily basis. And they wonder why there's so much shortening of people's lifespan. When man started eating animals, after the so-called permission that so many people like to use Genesis 9:3 as a joyful scripture to start consuming death, the lifespan declined 900 years and continues to decline to this day. And only when man stopped consuming death and stops wearing death and stops supporting the death industry, the death of animals and the death of humans, only when that is ceased in people's lives and people start what we call activism and all this other words, when people start caring about eliminating the obsession with death, do our lives start turning around and our diseases start turning around and our attitude starts turning around. When you stop consuming, wearing, and supporting the death industry, the murdering of the animals, the destroying of your own bodies, only when the obsession with death stops do we literally see the goal of Yah when he said in Jeremiah, I take no pleasure in the death of wicked people. I only want them to change from their wicked ways so they would live. And what were those wicked ways? What are those wicked ways? It is the obsession with the death industry, wearing, consuming, and supporting death, not only of humans and of animals. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not take this pleasure in the death industries. Only when that happens do you start seeing things turn around. If you stop consuming death and wearing death and supporting death, you will stop the decline in your death, in your physical death. Your life will change. Your health will change. You can reverse disease by stop consuming death and wearing death and supporting death. Your attitude will change. You can't have a good attitude if you're walking around consuming, wearing, and supporting death. You just can't. But your attitude changes when you stop supporting this death industry. Your health increases, your attitude you get better, and you're building up something that our Creator wanted us in the beginning. Over and over it says in the scriptures, I do not want your sacrifices. I want you to follow me. I want your heart. I want you to love me. I want you to love me. That you would sacrifice your desire for flesh and enhance your desire to follow me. I've given you every example of how death will bring us closer to the physical demise of our bodies. And for those of you that think scripture is not been tinted with by the enemy, for those of you that think, oh, what a beautiful smell it is, that our Creator appreciates the smell of dead flesh. Dead flesh doesn't smell good at all, folks. Dead flesh doesn't smell good at all. You might go and smell that barbecue and say, that smells pretty good. That is not the beginning of death. You go and find a dead raccoon in front of your house, or a dead rat in your house, or any dead animal in the world, and you smell that, and you tell me how that's supposed to be a beautiful fragrance and smell beautiful. Death does not smell good at all. Now, when you tamper with death, when you throw some spices and perfume and fire to it, now you're doing something else with the death that already occurred. But death itself does not smell good. There's nothing good about dead flesh. Dead flesh is the result of something that our Creator didn't originally want, and people are bringing it on themselves. And Yeshua came, one of the reasons he came was to restore the original. And it says in the scriptures, animals will not be consuming animals in the kingdom, to go back to the way it was supposed to be. You know, there's one thing that's going to be not in the kingdom, in the paradise, in the everlasting life, and that's Satan. He won't be there. And he's not going to tamper with anything again. And death won't be there either. And this is what he originally wanted here. He didn't want Satan to be here, and he didn't want death to be here. When Satan came, Satan brought the obsession with death. And it's amazing to me how many so-called believers or Christians out there, people that read the Bible, miss this, and they're obsessed with death. They're obsessed with it, and they use what about all the sacrifices in the Bible? What about, all of this that y'all allowed us to eat meat? What about Abraham feeding the angels meat and all this stuff? Think about the obsession that man has all throughout Scripture. And think about the goal of the enemy is to kill and destroy man. And man is doing it to their own bodies. Get away from the death. Our Creator valued the blood. The blood, it talks about that in Scripture, the blood, how valuable this thing was. The blood, so valuable. Yeshua again setting the example of blood. Blood was not made to be consumed. Blood was the life-giving liquid that our Creator designed us with. It wasn't something to be baked, broiled, and boiled and consumed. Our Creator clearly told us to not eat the blood. So instead of people saying, well, I'm going to stay away from eating that animal because there's blood in it, what do people say? How can we kill that animal and create a death without consuming the blood? That's how crazy and twisted man's thinking is. Our Creator says, don't eat the blood. So man says, okay. It makes sense to me to say, well, if I can't eat the blood, I won't eat the animal, and I have no issue with the blood. No chance I'm going to eat the blood. But what does man say? How can I eat that animal without eating that blood? I'm going to find a way to drain the blood of the animal and eat the animal. Not only did our Creator not want us to eat blood, he didn't want us to eat flesh. He wanted us to support the animals, keep them alive. Dominion is about taking care of. Man would have dominion over the animals. It was about taking care of. But that's not what happened. Man is completely taking that out of context. It doesn't mean to murder. Man's been given dominion over his children. There's a hierarchy, there's an order. Man's been given dominion over his children. It doesn't mean to kill and murder and eat his children. You take care of them, because they're supposedly not wise enough to take care of themselves. And that's the other thing. We're supposed to be created in the image of Yah, right? In the image of Yah. And so, wise and smart and everything else, but because of not only the death that consuming death brings and wearing death brings, but the tree of knowledge that we're supposed to eat from, we've lost that. Yah took that away. We no longer have the knowledge of Yah. We don't have the knowledge of Yah. Yah took that away from us a long time ago, because if we had the knowledge of Yah, we wouldn't be wearing, consuming, and supporting death. And we think about this. The life that Yah gives us and what he gives us to sustain ourselves, the mother's milk for the baby. In every area, aspect of life, the mother's milk for the baby, the mother's milk for the baby. And then again, where's the knowledge of Yah that man, after they're off the weaning process of being a baby, would still consume not only their mother's milk, but they would consume the milk of other animals' mother's milk. There's no other animal in nature that would consume the milk of another species. But man does it every single day. There's no other animal in nature that would consume milk after the weaning process, but man does it every single day. That's not the knowledge of Yah. That's the stupidity of Satan. And everything around the death industry is the stupidity of Satan. We act like it was a good thing we ate from the tree of knowledge. It was a bad thing that Eve decided to eat from the tree of knowledge. And because of her disobedience, turned it into the life of stupidity. It's not a good thing that we gain this knowledge. We need to forget everything. The Creator tells us, do not lean on your own understanding. If we had the knowledge of Yah, why wouldn't he want us to lean on our own understanding if we had the knowledge of Yah? He says, do not lean on your own understanding, because that's the stupidity of Satan. So we think we ate from the tree of knowledge, we have the knowledge of Yah. No, we don't. Yah said, do not lean on your knowledge. Trust in me, my ways, my will for your life. Trust in that, not the stupidity of man and the stupidity of Satan. The true tree of knowledge comes through following my holy word without your emotional state getting in there. That's what really the tree of knowledge brought on man. It was the tree of emotions. Yah didn't want us to have and be swayed by all these emotions of the enemy and the world and all this other stuff. He wants us to just trust him. Do not lean on our understanding. Follow him in all our ways. And we'll know his perfect will for us. His perfect will for us was to have the everlasting physical life. His perfect will for us was to have everlasting life with our wonderful Messiah. His perfect will for us was to produce and support life, not to destroy life. Everything from wearing the animals to consuming the animals, to supporting the death industry and killing the animals, and then even killing our own children. This is how far it's become through the practice of we call abortion, which was really murder of our own children. And now they're taking those body parts from those dead children and putting them in the very food that people eat. They're literally putting dead baby parts in food that people eat. And now we're doing the same thing with children that we're doing with animals. And it's just a matter of time we start doing it with each other. So now we got the animals eating the people. People got this warning, they got everything they need, but people keep supporting the death industry. So let me give you this. Try to stop supporting the death industry. Try it and see how your life changes. You say, my prayers aren't being answered. I have worry and fear because Eve ate from the tree of emotions. I have all these emotions. I can't follow our Creator's word because my emotional state is too strong. And the only way I can forget about it for a moment is to eat some dead animal. It's crazy and backwards. Try to stop eating and supporting the death industry for a little while. Try it. Try to get back to what our Creator wanted. Stop wearing the animals, consuming the animals, and supporting the industry of this death. And see how your body changes. See how your thought changes. And see how your prayers change. See how your health changes. See how things are answered. I strongly see the example our Creator shows in Scripture without using the excuses of nitpicking a Scripture. It says, but what about this? But he allowed that and all this. which, as we look at in Scripture and we go through Scripture, and if you really want to dig deep into Scripture, you see the real reason why these things happened. Some people say, well, Yah allowed Peter to eat unclean animals. No, Yah didn't want Peter to eat any animals. He didn't want any of us to consume death. But if you start seeing the real reasons behind these Scriptures, you wouldn't run to some nitpick scriptures, say, well, Yeshua put the spirit into the pigs knowing they were going to kill themselves, so Yeshua killed animals. Or, well, Yeshua ate fish, so he must have killed the animals and supported death. And all these other scriptures that have been twisted around, misinterpreted, and taken out of context to support the death industry. It's not what our Creator wanted. He didn't want this sacrificial system, and Yeshua came to do away with that, not support that. And when Yeshua tried to do that clearly in the marketplace, they put him to death because they didn't want to stop their consumption of death on every level and their obsession with death. Yeshua did everything, did miracles and everything, and spoke to them and did everything. But finally, when he went to the temple to face this issue of the death industry being supported in the temple, we hear all the time he was turning over the tables of money change and doing all these things. What were they selling? What were they supporting? It was the death industry. That's what it was, and that's what he wanted nothing to do with. They don't pick out and nitpick the scriptures and study the scriptures and say, hey, I don't want your sacrifices. I want your hearts. They don't look at that scripture, but they start looking at scriptures that show, well, he ate this or he said he allowed this or something else. But ask yourselves why, and ask yourself what are the consequences of that. And even more powerful and important, try it before you deny it. Do it for yourselves. And it's a shame that the so-called New Age people of this world, the people that do not claim to follow Yeshua, the people that do not claim to be Christians, you'll find in all these other belief systems, the communities where they don't support the death industry. They don't support it. But then you come into the church and you see death still all over the place. Wearing, eating, and supporting the death culture. At the same time saying, oh, abortion's bad because you're murdering children. What about the thousands of animals that are being murdered every single day? Supporting the death industry. Get away from that on every level. Try it for yourself and see what happens. And yes, this is something that we can do. It's not about the nation you live in or anything. It is a personal thing. If you're not getting your prayers answered, if you're struggling with certain diseases or any hardships in life, think about how much you support the death industry. Go and open up your refrigerator or your cupboards and seeing how much death is sitting there on the shelves. Think about Satan is connected to death. And our Creator is connected to life. Today I give before you life and death. Choose life so you may live. That's what the scriptures say. And the people answered not a word because of their obsession with death. Get away from the obsession with death. Choose life. Choose life. Follow our Creator's ways and you'll have a life of peace and shalom. And that's what he says. There's no peace and shalom in murder. Right? I pray you can pray about these things I'm saying and consider these things. Have a blessed day, brothers and sisters. Yah be with you all, and shalom, shalom.